Retro.
Hey, this is Lauren Mary Kim, and I'm the stunt double for Ahsoka Tano in Clone Wars and the armorer in The Mandalorian. You're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. This is the way.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krabs.
And it is Friday, about time. But with Friday comes our regular look at Star Wars news. And so we got some interesting things to discuss this week. But before we get into all that, Jay, remind everybody where we can be found on Facebook and Instagram.
Of course, Dennis, we are always found at Podcast Stardust on all your socials, including Facebook and Instagram.
Okay. This is the line. The signal's boosted to maximum output. The shield is down, and we are now broadcasting to the galaxy. So, to pull back the curtain a little bit, we are recording this on Thursday night, August 13th. D23 has just kicked off. As of yet, there's been no big Star Wars announcements. I know they have quite the presence at D23. So there is the potential for some news to come out of that convention, and we'll be covering it next week. So there you go. If you were hoping to get the latest, you're just not going to get it on this episode because nothing's happened yet. So again, anything that comes out of that, we'll be talking about next week. We still have some news. And this first story, Jay, saw this online and like media action was what?
Right.
And that is, and this is driving me crazy. All the headlines are saying Lucasfilm has officially canceled another Star Wars movie. That's an interesting way of putting it. What am I talking about? Sam Farnaby, who is the writer for Wonka and the Paddington movies, revealed in an interview with Variety that he was on board to write a Star Wars movie, and he was working with his collaborator, Paul King, who had directed those same movies. But then they didn't get it approved by Lucasfilm and Disney. The crux of this is that the movie was based around a robot and it did not involve any key Star Wars characters. According to which article you read about this, the reason why Disney and Lucasfilm didn't pick it up was that it didn't mesh with their style of storytelling. Some are saying it's because it didn't have any key characters. I don't think that's a real reason because we know we're getting Starfighter, which doesn't have any of the key characters on it next year. But whatever the reason is, they decided not to develop this as a Star Wars movie, but Disney has requested that they rework it as a standalone concept sci-fi film because it just wasn't working right for Star Wars on this. So, okay. It's driving me nuts that everyone's saying this movie's been officially canceled. Well, it was never officially on. Is the thing that's bugging me here. It was pitched and it was developed, but it was never greenlit in this case. So, okay, clickbait headlines aside, I admit I haven't seen Wonka. I haven't seen the Paddington movies, so I'm not the person to judge whether this would have been a good product or not. I don't know if you've seen any of those, but what do you make of all this?
Well, to answer your question, no, I have not seen either one of those two movies. And I just think it's funny because in our notes, you have Lucasfilm canceled a Star Wars movie I never heard of. And I'm like, yeah, we've never heard of it because we have been basically almost having our own little side segment of the whack-a-mole movie Star Wars, phenomenon over the past couple of years of, oh, this movie was greenlit, and it started, but now it's not. And what's happening with this movie and that movie? So we've kind of had that, like I said, our own little recurring segment on that. But it's almost like this one is like, surprise, I existed too. Really? Did you? But what I find kind of interesting about this whole thing is the fact that, yes, they think that it could be reworked into a standalone sci-fi movie. So the fact that, there's a difference between a new Star Wars story, aka something like Starfighter, for example, and a story that could exist anywhere, but just happens to have Star Wars branding. You know what I
Right.
mean? So I guess are we really losing anything here? I guess you don't really lose anything that you didn't know existed in the first place. But you know where I'm going with that? That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, here's the thing. It's the encouraging part to me is that Lucasfilm and Disney never announced this themselves. It's just this writer coming out and saying, I was working on a project that was intended to be a Star Wars movie. Lucasfilm said no. And that's the way they should be doing it, right? As opposed to getting up on the stage at Celebration and saying, hey, we're doing Dawn of the Jedi, New Jedi Order, and Heir to the
Right?
Empire, the shorthand that we've
Mhm.
been for all those movies. And then they never get developed beyond that. They start to develop them, they start to write them, they never get them over the finish line. In this case, Lucasfilm was like, yeah, we're listening to a pitch, but it just doesn't even seem like anything from what I can tell where Lucasfilm recruited someone to write this movie. They came to Lucasfilm and said, hey, we want to do this. And like, well, we're intrigued. Let's listen to your pitch. And then they just couldn't come up with something that Lucasfilm was going to approve. That's the way it should go. Similarly, for as much grief as Lucasfilm and Disney caught for The Hunt for Ben Solo, again, a movie they never announced. And if it hadn't been from Adam Driver and Soderbergh coming out and talking about it after the fact, we still wouldn't have known about it. So
Mhm.
I think they finally learned their lesson that we can't keep announcing projects that are never going to see the light of day, or that, we aren't 100% that are certainly going to see the light of day. What's the last thing they announced? Starfighter. And we know that movie has been filmed. It's in editing. It's coming out May next year. That's the way they should be operating at this point.
Mhm. Yeah. And you know what this whole story kind of gives me vibes of is back when Zack Snyder talked about writing his movie that eventually became Rebel Moon,
Yes.
So then,
Yeah.
I mean, this could be something akin to that maybe at some point as well. I don't
Yeah.
know.
What's funny about that comparison, and I was thinking something similar, Jay, was that Rebel Moon was not being picked up for Disney for one of the reasons was because it was R. It was rated R. And that they're
Mhm.
like, Disney like, no, we kind of want our Star Wars to be PG-13.
Right.
That's the rating we're looking for. So families can go see this thing. And so Snyder's like, okay, fine. I can develop this as something else. And we talked about that movie. It got mixed reviews, but we liked it.
Mhm.
And this seems to be like the far opposite. I don't know what the story is, who the intended audience is, but just the bare bones description that I'm getting of this movie sounds very G rated to me. And
Mhm.
that may not be the case at all, but it just seems to be like the opposite of Rebel Moon.
Mhm. Kind of like an Iron Giant
Yeah,
droid Star Wars kind of feel good is what you're thinking.
like Wally,
Mhm,
it's
mhm. Well,
something like that.
especially, yeah, if he wrote Wonka and Paddington,
Hmm.
those are 2 kind of family-based movies.
Very much so, definitely. I
Mhm,
mean, I
mhm,
haven't seen them, but I saw plenty of the promotional material for them. So,
mhm,
okay.
mhm.
So, anyway, a Star Wars movie that we weren't looking forward to gets canceled, and I don't think that we're necessarily any worse off. But there we go. That's my takeaway. All right. Next, in television news, a project that or show that you and I were both very fond of, The Dual Payback from season 3 of Visions, has won an Emmy for Best Individual Achievement in Animation. So I don't know if you had an opportunity to look into this award, Jay, but it's not necessarily a competitive award. They basically give this one out to projects that meet some threshold that may accomplish some sort of achievement there. And it's not like they aren't necessarily winning at the expense of anything else, but I don't know who actually gives the Emmys out, but the people behind them saw this, recognized the skill, the artistry, and awarded this Emmy, months ahead of when the rest of the Emmys get revealed. So you and I are big fans of The Duel from season 1 and Payback from season 3. So I was pleased to see that they got this recognition.
Oh, yeah, and I thought of you exactly when I saw this because I know you're a huge fan, and I am too, but I know this is definitely one that was at the top of your list, and I just think it's so well deserved, and I love the fact that it is such a unique style of Star Wars animation as well. I mean, you think about it, the visual language is so different from any other Lucasfilm animation project, obviously. I mean, even within Visions, which is pushing the threshold for all the filmmakers to kind of play in that Star Wars sandbox. But I mean, you think about the monochrome, samurai aesthetic, the whole composition of it, the movement that was involved in the storytelling and the swordplay. I mean, everything about this was just so great. It's almost like somebody took Kurosawa's work and put it into a Star Wars blender and made it beautiful in its own way. And I think it's great that it's getting kudos for not just that specifically, but the fact that it's telling the story in its own visual language the way that it did. So I'm just really happy for everybody involved.
Yeah, cool characters, like you said, great style on that. It's very reminiscent of some of those Kurosawa type black and white films, the way it looks there, with a little bit of anime sheen thrown over the top of it. So I hope with this type of recognition that they are encouraged to make more. So we'll see what happens.
Absolutely.
Okay, last story we've got, and I've been waiting to get to this discussion with you ever since I sent you the link a few days ago. Star Wars and Marvel Comics have announced a crossover event called Hope Assembles, where the heroes and villains of the Star Wars universe will act out Star Wars on our world with the heroes and villains of Marvel's 616 universe. So Spider-Man, Captain America, Doctor Doom, the Avengers, all the, Thanos, whatever's in some of the imagery here. It's going to be written by Kevin Smith. Yes, that Kevin Smith, with art by David Marquez, who's been working on Uncanny X-Men. It's going to be a 5-issue limited series that launches in January 2027. It's being promoted as part of the big build up to the 50th anniversary of A New Hope. And then Kevin Smith has had this to say about it. Back in the early 80s, I had a subscription to Marvel's Star Wars comics. And as fun as it was to follow the continuing adventures of Luke, Leia, and Han, I always wished that Spider-Man or Doctor Doom could cross over into their cinematic saga. So when the opportunity arose to actually tell that story, nobody had to force my hand. I'm ecstatic to be writing Hope Assembles for the 50th anniversary of Star Wars. Many thanks to Marvel Comics and Lucasfilm for trusting me to fly the Falcon and the Quinjet. So the other little brief detail we get behind about how this is all going to be possible is some sort of spell shatters the reality leading to the events from Star Wars to unfold on Earth. So what do you think?
Well, when you sent this to me and I read it over, I said, I'm not sure how I feel about this.
Yeah.
And I really pondered this in the days since. And, I guess the best thing that I can say is that my first knee-jerk reaction is that I don't feel like these two worlds were meant to collide. But I don't think it's automatically a bad thing. But Star Wars and Marvel just have such distinct identities, and putting them together just feels less organic to me and more like, hey, we're creating a crossover because we can. Because ironically, it's the 50th anniversary of Star Wars, so and just the fact that I appreciate the fact that Kevin Smith is like, oh yeah, this is a dream of mine that I've had since I was a kid. Well, yeah, I mean, so are Ninja Pirates and Pirate Ninjas, but that doesn't mean that we need to put them together. So I don't know, Dennis. I'm really torn about this. And okay, so I thought about this today. I'm going to go on a little tirade. And I know that this is not meant to be canon, right? I mean, this
As
is
far as
not,
I can tell, it's
yeah,
just
it's just supposed to be
yeah.
deliciously weird kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, because what bothers me about the whole thing is that in Captain America Winter Soldier, right? We already established that Star Wars is a movie because it was on Steve Rogers' list of stuff to watch, and it was crossed off. And in every version, every international version of the movie, it is there as a movie, not as another universe. You know what
Well,
I'm
that's not the
saying?
only
So
reference. Think of Civil War when Spider-Man says, "Did you ever see that old movie, The Empire Strikes Back?" when they go to take out Ant-Man when he's gone giant. So yes, it is
exactly.
right. Yeah.
So again, it's like fiction becomes reality within another fictional universe. And it's like, whoa, this is really, really trippy. So yeah. So how do you
my
feel?
only response to that is that the cinematic universe is not the same thing as the comic universe. But I
That's fair.
had a
Yeah.
similar thought when you said that. To me, Where do I begin? They've done various crossovers that quote unquote don't count, that they're just there for the fun of it, for the storytelling that could be made of it. Recently, Marvel's done a crossover event with Godzilla. DC did one as well. Marvel's previously done a crossover event with Star Trek, and it's not part of canon either. It is just a fun way. To me, it's going back to the sandbox as a kid. You take your Star Wars action figures, and there wasn't many Marvel action figures at the time, but there were some, and you're playing with them all together. And that's kind of the fun of it. And Kevin Smith's our generation. He's Gen X too. And so I could see what the inspiration for this might be. You know, he explicitly referenced the old Marvel comics, which could be quite ridiculous at times, but they were fun. And so I'm looking at it like this, is that I am not going to run out to my comic store and pick up all these issues. And I am going to wait for them to come to the Marvel Unlimited app, and I'll read them there when that's what I'm paying for. I don't usually buy a whole lot of fresh comics anymore. My wife gets me some, which is fun, and I always appreciate that. But this is something that has me curious. What is my excitement level of this? I don't know. I can't say it's like 10. I can't say it's 11 or, out of 10 or anything like that. It's, 6, 7. I'm intrigued. I'm very curious. I do want to read it, but it's, I am kind of having a hard time seeing how Luke and like Peter Parker would interact.
Right.
And, Luke is someone from the backwaters of Tatooine who is resistant to pick up, answer the call. Meanwhile, Peter Parker is the whole, with great power comes great responsibility, trying to do the best after the death of Uncle Ben. Spoilers, sorry. But there's like no common frame of reference with these worlds that we're talking about. So that's kind of just like, throw a character like Wolverine in there, and how would he talk to Han Solo?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's much easier for me to envision Thanos or Doctor Doom talking to the likes of Darth Vader and the Emperor. That I can see much easier on that. There's a whole like dark side philosophy that I think permeates all those type of characters. And I don't mean dark side of the force necessarily, just dark whatever that philosophical things. I could see that working, but yeah, it's just some of the comparisons. Like I was trying to think like what characters would best interact like on the light side, and I'm not sure. I like the they had a bunch of like I think they're comic covers on the story on StarWars.com, and one showed like the Fantastic Four interacting with Leia, and I was like, that one kind of makes sense to me. That one I can kind of see working, but others I just wasn't feeling as much. So again, it's curious. We did the Disney Infinities comics. We covered those here on this show last year, the year before. I can't remember when exactly we did that. That came out from Dark Horse all those years ago. Right. And so it was fun to talk about stories that are no part of any continuity, not Legends, not the current canon, none of that. It just was a fun take to discuss on Star Wars. And so that's how I guess I'm just approaching this. I'm not going to get bothered by any continuity issues and stuff like that. I'm just more curious with how these characters would interact.
No, that's totally fair. And I like the word that you used, intrigued. And I will say I am intrigued because, like I said, it could be just deliciously weird, and just kind of go along for the ride with it. I'm just very curious to see how Kevin Smith is going to work it out, because obviously Marvel and Star Wars have very different storytelling DNA, you know? So like you said, how would these characters interact, and what is the explanation for this quote unquote spell, and how is that going to work out? And so I guess maybe I'm overthinking it, and I should just step back and say, okay, this is just for fun, something along the lines of, what Family Guy did, or The Simpsons, or, but those kind of crossovers are different in that those creators knew that they were just playing with Star Wars, you know what I mean? Not really asking us to accept that they literally exist in the same universe. Like you're not going to have Homer Simpson and
Sure. Yeah, no, I get you're saying, Phineas and Ferb have done Star Wars.
Right.
And, as you said, and all those things, and that's
Fortnite.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Has
and
used
those
it.
characters, Disney Infinity had Star Wars characters that you could use with Marvel characters, in the
Mhm.
sandbox thing that you could play, and that's all good and well. I mean, to me, it's again, you already suspend your disbelief to enjoy Marvel, to enjoy Star Wars, and now you're
Oh, for
being
sure.
asked to
Yeah.
suspend your disbelief to the second power, so that these two could cross over. But I've seen comics where, and this may be a phantom memory, but I was like, I think Superman and Terminator have fought. And then, of course, a very successful crossover was Alien and Predator, but those are much
Mhm.
more of a similar genre, and they work, and now they populate each other's worlds and movies and the like.
Right, right.
So, that's very successful. Of course, the problem is with Star Wars and Marvel is that Star Wars takes place in a galaxy far, far away, a long time ago. And there's no like real overlap that we can know. There is a story out there, and I can't remember if this was a Dark Horse thing or if it was just someone did online, but it was Han and Chewbacca crash the Millennium Falcon. Han dies in the crash, and then years later, you see um, Indiana Jones come across like this wreckage. It looks like an ancient artifact, and Chewbacca is like Bigfoot in the woods. And that was kind of a clever telling that someone came up with that,
Mhm.
obviously is not any type of canon and stuff like that. So
Sure.
I guess that's just kind of the thing I'm looking for here is what kind of cleverness can we get up to that there is something to, there are classic hero motifs and villain motifs between both properties that I could see may work well together. And so, like I said, it's much easier to see, I think, with the villains than it is the heroes, but
It
who's
is,
to
isn't
say it
that
couldn't
weird?
work? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm with you. I mean, I was the one in my own, sandbox, if you will, that would have Wonder Woman and Barbie being best friends,
Mhm.
so I get the whole idea that this is stuff that we all kinda did as a kid and kind of mixed the metaphors, if you will, and had them all play together in the same sandbox, so, yeah, so
Yeah.
we'll just see what Kevin Smith does with it, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess here's the other thing, it's like, so and I'm gonna explain this clumsily, so bear with me, but Marvel, the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, they take place on another version of Earth, and so when you see, like, people cosplaying those characters, it's just kinda like, "Oh, yeah," they're not real, obviously, but everything that's referential about them is from our world. When you see someone cosplaying Star Wars, no matter how amazing it is, especially your cosplay, Jay, it's like
Oh,
they're not from
thanks.
our galaxy. They look out of place next to the subway station, next to the bus stop, next to the office building, whatever. Yes, Coruscant is full of skyscrapers, but they're not Earth skyscrapers. There's
Right.
no four-tired automobiles driving around and stuff like that. So I don't know why that cosplay thing came out in my head, but it's just it, that's the part with it is that with all the other crossovers that took place, the characters are all from the same world as opposed
Mhm.
to Star Wars, which is from a completely different galaxy. So,
Mhm, mhm, and thank you, by the way, for the very
of
kind
course,
words.
yeah,
Appreciate that. You could almost even though they're in different time frames, you could almost see it working better as a crossover between Marvel and Star Trek, because at least Star Trek takes place, based on Earth as opposed to you know what I mean? As opposed to Star
yeah,
Wars, which is in a completely different category, but again, 2 different time frames, so there's that.
yeah, yeah. I gotta say, I think it was the Next Generation that Marvel crossed over. I just seen a lot of references to that, and as people were
Mhm.
talking about this story as well, and
Right. And hey, there is the time stone, so
yeah,
there's that.
the thing about it is I feel like Star Wars storytelling, just like with action, works better with Marvel than Star Trek storytelling because so many Star Trek episodes are not action dependent, like fighting off a villain so much as exploring like an anomaly or trying to figure out how to deal with some sort of cosmic event or whatever. But
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah,
True.
it's interesting. But as an somewhat related to this, uh, Spider-Man, Brand New Day. We were talking about that last week in the news. Spider-Man ended up being a big part of
Yeah.
our news. You've had a chance to see it since
I
then. So what did you
have.
think?
Oh, Dennis, it was fantastic. And, I left the theater thinking to myself, gosh, I think this is maybe my favorite Spider-Man movie of all
Mhm.
of them for a lot of different reasons. But I just think that it was so well done and the storytelling was just so exquisite. And I've seen so many things since then that just pay homage to very certain scenes in the movie that mimic comic book covers and
Mm-hmm.
art. And I just think that that is so fantastic that there was just such intentionality with that. And the fact that you could not predict what was going to happen next. And there was just that beautiful, I think, kind of correlation and combination, I guess you could say, of your classic Marvel, but then there was also some of the whimsy that you get from things like the new Avengers, for example, and
Mm-hmm.
even Guardians of the Galaxy. So I just thought it was amazing from start to finish.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Spoiler for anyone who's not seen this. Skip ahead a minute or two. Did you catch the Star Wars reference in the movie?
Yes. Yes, when Ned had Empire Strikes Back on.
Yeah.
Yes. And honestly, I didn't at first. And I was with Colby one and he nudged me. He goes, he's watching Star Wars. I was like, oh my gosh, he is. So
Yeah.
Colby
Well,
caught it first.
what was even great was that it was the Empire Strikes Back, the AT-ATs on Hoth, which is the scene that Peter Parker referenced in Civil War. So,
Oh my gosh,
I,
that's true.
yeah.
Yes.
So it's like a double cameo like reference as well. So
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic.
I
So
sat straight up
again,
when I
another
saw that.
Another Marvel crossover with Star Wars.
Yeah. So in a spoiler off, I saw today that yesterday, Brand New Day crossed the $700 million mark domestically, and its
Whew.
box office is over 1.8 billion worldwide.
Wow. Yeah, it had just gone over 1 billion last week when we were talking about it. So it's almost doubled since then. That is insane.
Yeah, stands a really good chance of breaking the box office record. So,
You're not kidding. And here's the crazy thing too, and I know we talked about it, was that I had not seen one trailer for this.
mhm.
And so when it came out, it was like, oh, this is out. Oh yeah, sure, I'll go see it. I want to go see it again. I really do. I really want to see this movie again. It was
Yeah,
so
I don't know that I'll make it to the theaters to see it again, but I am very excited for it to come to home video
me
streaming
too.
platforms and stuff like that, so I can watch it again. Really, really, really enjoyed it. So, okay, well, we're going to end our Star Wars news podcast with that note on Spider-Man. But anyway, we're starting to do that more lately, and that's fine. These are all Star Wars adjacent properties, and we're not going to make it the heart of the show, but it is fun while we're doing our Star Wars conversation, talk about these other related properties from time to time. So you can expect that. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to apologize for it. That's just what we like to do on this show. So,
Absolutely.
all right. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up this week's news. And thank you all for joining us for this episode of Podcast Stardust. If you want to get our weekly take on what's going on in the world of Star Wars, then make sure you've subscribed to the podcast on your podcatcher of choice. We're available pretty much everywhere. We also appreciate your comments, ratings, reviews, feedback that all these different podcatchers afford. I try and round it up from time to time. I've been bad about that the past 2 weeks, but it's a really busy time right now. So try and get to that sometime soon. I also like to remind you that you can find all of our past episodes, all previous 1,070 of them, over on retrozap.com, which is home to the podcast network, as well as some other great shows that are putting out some great content as well. Jay, you want to go ahead and remind everybody what our social media contacts are and where else we can be found online?
Absolutely. So you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust. And always check out our Pinterest boards because you never know what you're going to find over there. And other places that you can find us to listen and download the show are places like YouTube and YouTube Music, which also do support ratings, reviews, and please subscribe and share that out with your friends as well. And we're also on Audible, Spotify, all the places. So we just appreciate any place that you would tune in and share. And then if you'd like to drop us a line, we'd love to hear your thoughts on any of our news stories or any of our other episodes. And if you want to send us some questions, we're always up for answering questions on the show. You can do that at podcaststardust@gmail.com. And lastly, if you'd like to support the show even further, we'd love to see some Podcast Stardust merch out in the wild. So hit up our TeePublic store at the link in our notes and in our bio on Instagram and Facebook. And you can get yourself one of 7 different show logo designs. And if you do happen to get something, please take a picture and post it and tag us because we do love to see that support. So once again, check out that link in our show notes.
Okay, upcoming on the show on Monday, we'll be getting into episode 2 of The Ninth Jedi. And then on Wednesday, it is the next installment in our The Force Awakens series. And we can't wait to bring that to you. We've already recorded that episode. We got a great guest that you've all heard before on the show. So make sure you stick around for that. So with that, just want to say thanks again for listening to episode 1071 of Podcast Stardust, everyone. Have a fantastic weekend. And until next time, may the Force be with you.